Hi everyone, I'm back. I want you to think about this. What if you were a tiny person? And when I say tiny, I mean just a few inches tall. Think about that. How would you like to be that tall? I'm going to read a story today called The Littles, and I am sitting here next to one of my favorite places to be. Do you remember what that is? That's right, the water, and you see the cat going by as well. She'll probably be in and out. But I'm going to read you this story today called The Littles, and while I am reading it, I want you to use the strategy we have talked about of pushing that button, making the movie screen come down, and when the movie screen comes down, I want you to picture what's happening in the story. Picture the sights, the sounds, anything that I give you. Make it happen on your movie screen. Are you ready? All right. William T. Little and his family were tiny people. They lived in a house owned by George W. Big. Mr. Big and his family didn't know the Littles were living with them. The Littles kept out of sight. They lived in tiny rooms in the walls of the house. The Littles looked almost like people you see every day, but they were very much smaller. Mr. Little was only 6 inches tall, and he was big for a little. The other Littles were even smaller. In one way, the Littles did not look at all like other people. They had tails. The Littles were proud of their tails. They kept them combed and brushed, and sometimes the women curled their tails when they wanted to look especially nice. The Littles took everything they needed from the Bigs. Usually the Bigs didn't even know anything was missing. But once in a while, Mrs. Big would say, "Now, where did that thing go? I had it right here a minute ago. It seems to have disappeared." Only last week, her son Henry had shouted, "Hey, Ma, where are my red socks? I can't find them anywhere." And of course, the Littles got all their food from the Bigs. When the Bigs had roast beef for dinner, the Littles had roast beef for dinner too. The Bigs didn't know it, but the electric socket on the kitchen counter was a secret door. As soon as the Big family were busy eating their cake or their pie or their Jell-O, the Littles would dash through the door. They would take what they needed of the leftover dinner scraps and be back through the door in seconds. The Littles helped the Bigs in return for the things they took. Only the Bigs didn't know it. For one thing, the Littles were good at fixing things. They ran back and forth inside the walls, repairing the electric wires whenever they needed it. The Littles were good plumbers, too. On cold winter days, they kept the outside water pipes from freezing. Often, they had to stay up all night keeping the pipes warm by candle fire. Mr. Big could never understand why his plumbing and electricity worked so well. "I can't believe it," he would say. "I have less trouble with this old house than my neighbors do with their brand new houses." He would shake his head. "I guess they don't make houses the way they used to." Chapter 2. One day in May, the Littles were together in their living room. Their children, Tom, 10 years old, and Lucy, 8, were on the sofa next to their mother. Granny Little sat in her rocking chair knitting a red sweater for Tom. "Don't know why Henry Big made such a fuss when we took his old red socks," she said. "One of them had a real bad hole in the toe." Uncle Pete, holding his cane, leaned against the fireplace. "You have enough red yarn there, Granny," he said, "to start a knitting factory." Mr. Little was walking back and forth. "Please sit down, Will," said Mrs. Little. "You're making me nervous." "Now, there's no reason for us to be worried," said Mr. Little. "The Bigs have gone on vacation before." "But never for 3 months," said Mrs. Little. "And what about this new family?" said Uncle Pete. "The Newcombs." He shook his cane in the air. "We don't even know them." "We don't have to, Uncle Pete. I keep telling you that," said Mr. Little. "If they're good enough for the Bigs, they're good enough for the Littles. Besides, they'll only be here for 3 months. We can stand anything for 3 months. Why do they want to rent the house for only 3 months? Said Tom. Isn't that kind of silly? The Newcombs are from the city, said Mr. Little. Sometimes city people rent houses in the country while the owners are away on vacation. It's like a vacation for city people to live in the country for a while, said Mrs. Little. I don't like it, said Uncle Pete. Suppose they bring a cat with them. Lucy Little moved closer to her mother. Oh, Mother, suppose they bring a cat with them. Mrs. Little put her arm around her daughter. Granny Little stopped rocking. Did he say they have a cat? She nodded toward Uncle Pete. No, no, said Mr. Little. He said, suppose they have a cat. Oh, said Granny Little. She started rocking again. I hope they don't bring a cat. Ah, who's afraid of an old cat, said Tom. I wish everybody would stop talking about cats, said Lucy. I'm afraid of cats. She looked from person to person. Please, let's stop talking about cats. That's the end of chapter 2. You will have to join me next time to hear chapter 3. Think about it. If you're little, why would you not want a cat in the house? Until next time.